Okay, let's talk about that moment in a Java interview. You know the one. The interviewer leans in and says, "So, tell me about Completely Future Fire." And maybe you feel a little bit of a panic. Well, you're not alone. In the next few minutes, we're going to completely demystify this. We'll walk through a solid game plan that will not only help you answer the questions, but show that you really get asynchronous programming in Java. Let's get you ready to ace this.
All right, here we go. The interview kicks off with that classic question. How you answer this first part is so important. A sharp, confident definition right off the bat shows you have a rock-solid foundation. And believe me, that sets a great tone for the entire rest of the interview.
So what do you say? Here's the perfect one-liner. You want to say something like, Complete Future Future, which came out in Java 8, is an abstraction for an asynchronous, non-blocking result of some computation. And the real kicker is this next part. And it lets you build these amazing async pipelines using functional style callbacks. Hitting those key points, Java 8, async, non-blocking, and pipelines, shows you don't just know what it is, but you understand why it's so powerful. Now, to really stand out, you have to tell the story of why it even exists, right? Before CompletableFuture, we had the old future interface. And honestly, it had some major problems. First off, its get method was blocking. I mean, what's the point of async if you're just going to sit there and wait? It totally defeats the purpose. Plus, you couldn't easily chain tasks together, and the exception handling was, well, not great. CompletableFuture came along and fixed all of that. It gave us non-blocking callbacks, this beautiful, fluent way to build pipelines, and error handling that actually works. It was a total game changer. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start by absolutely nailing that opening question. Then we'll dive into the fun part, building async pipelines. After that, we'll tackle combining different tasks and dealing with errors when things go wrong. Then we'll shift into some pro-level knowledge that'll make you look like a senior dev. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a powerful closing statement. So a good interviewer isn't just going to stop at the definition. They'll probably follow up with something like, okay, so how do you actually create one? Let's dig into that, because it's a fundamental piece of the puzzle. And that follow-up question is almost always about creation. You really only need to know two main ways to start things off. First, you've got supply async. You use this when your task is going to compute something and return a value. It takes a supplier, which is just a fancy name for a function that gives you a result. Simple enough. On the other hand, you've got run async. This is for your fire and forget tasks, the ones that just do something but don't return anything. It takes a runnable, which, you guessed it, is just a task that runs. That's it.
Okay, now for the really cool part. The true magic of Complete Futurefy happens when you start chaining these asynchronous operations into a pipeline. This is where a lot of people get tripped up, so let's walk through it nice and slow. So the interviewer might throw you a curveball. They'll say, okay, you fetch a user ID, and then you need to use that ID to fetch the full user object in another async call. How do you do that? Now, your first instinct might be to use then apply. But if you do that, look what happens. You get this ugly nested thing. A complete future table inside another complete future table. It's a super common mistake, and it just makes your code a mess to work with. And here's the elegant solution. Then compose. This method was built for exactly this situation. It takes the result from the first future, feeds it into a function that creates a new future, and then, this is the magic part, it automatically flattens that nested structure for you. So instead of that messy, double-wrapped future, you just get one clean, single, completable future with your final result. Beautiful.
So here it is, the one rule you need to remember. Use then apply when you're doing a simple synchronous transformation on a result, like, say, turning a string to uppercase. But you use then compose when your next step is another asynchronous task that needs the result from the first one. Getting this distinction right is probably the single biggest step to mastering complete future task. All right, let's level up. We're moving into more advanced real-world stuff now. We're going to look at how you can combine the results of totally independent tasks and, just as important, how to handle things gracefully when they inevitably go sideways. Okay, picture this. You need to get user details from one microservice and their order history from a completely different one. These two things don't depend on each other, so you can, and should, run them at the same time. This is the perfect job for then combine. It takes two futures, waits for both of them to finish, and then gives you a way to merge their results together. It's an incredibly powerful way to speed up your application by running things in parallel. Let's be real, things are gonna fail. Handling exceptions in an async pipeline is absolutely critical. You've got three main tools here. First, exceptionally. Think of this as your plan B. If an exception happens, this method catches it and lets you provide a default fallback value. Then there's handle, which is more powerful.
It gets called no matter what, success or failure. It gives you both the result and the exception so you can decide what to do in either case. And finally, when complete. This one is for side effects, like logging. It lets you peek at the outcome, but you can't actually change it. We're in the big leagues now. If you can talk intelligently about the threading model and common mistakes, you're not just answering questions anymore. You're showing a deep, practical understanding that goes way beyond the basics. Sooner or later, you're going to get asked about that async suffix. What's the difference between then apply and then apply async? Here's the key insight. It's not about what the code does, it's about where it runs. The version without async might run your code in the same thread as the previous task. And if that's a sensitive I/O thread, you definitely don't want to block it. The async versions, however, guarantee your task gets handed off to a proper thread pool. This gives you way more control and keeps your application responsive. And this is where you can score some serious bonus points. Show them you're not just book smart, but you've been in the trenches. Talk about the common traps people fall into, like calling that blocking get.method all over the place, or that classic mistake of mixing up then apply with then compose. A big one, especially in server apps, is forgetting to provide a custom thread pool and accidentally starving the system's main thread pool. When you bring up these kinds of real-world pitfalls, it sends a clear signal. This person has actually built stuff with this. It's a huge credibility boost. Okay, time to bring it all home. After you've crushed all the detailed questions, you get a chance to tie it all together with a powerful summary. This is where you connect all the dots and leave a really strong, lasting impression. You can wrap everything up with a perfect real-world example. Just talk about modern microservices. You might need to call a user service and an order service to build a single web page. CompletableFuture is literally the perfect tool for this job. Why? Because it lets you do non-blocking I/O and run those calls in parallel, which is absolutely essential for building systems that are fast, scalable, and responsive. So, to wrap it all up, you can say something like this. CompleteFutureFi is an essential tool for modern Java development. It enables a declarative, non-blocking, asynchronous style of programming that is perfectly suited for today's microservice architectures, where building scalable and responsive systems is the name of the game. A summary like that connects all the technical details right back to real business value. It's the perfect way to end. And there you have it. That's our complete tour of CompleteFuture. By really understanding these concepts, from how you create them to the tricky parts about threading and error handling, you are more than ready to handle any interview question on this topic with total confidence. Now go out there and nail it.